Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Welcome to the Rad Dads Show. Who are you?
My name is Scott McCord. I go on air by McCord at Edmonton's Best Rock 100.3 The Bear. I am on the morning show. That is all secondary to my best gig, which is husband to my beautiful wife, Crystal, and of course, father to my son, Brendan, who is 7 years old and is the absolute still point of my turning world. So, yeah, that's who I am.
There you go. I love it. It's a simplistic life, maybe. Do you consider yourself a rad dad?
I try to be. I don't know. I think I am. I consider myself a rad dad in the way that my dad didn't have a podcast like this to talk with other dads. I think it's something that's really sort of been emblematic in our generation, that we can have these conversations. I think that in itself is pretty rad. I mean, yeah, it's great to be the dad who uh introduces the New York Dolls to his kid, but it's also really, really cool to be the dad who talks about being a dad with other dads. I think that's, there's that equal part between, it's almost the art and commerce balance, right? Where you've got to have that that emotional groundwork to do all the other fun stuff, which is, here's why the Ramones say 1, 2, 3, 4 before every song, right? Like that kind of thing. There's a lot to do before you get to that point. And I think one of the things is, this is a starting point, conversations like this that we're having right now. So that's what makes it rad, to be perfectly honest with you.
Nice. I like that. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the hope with the show, is just kind of give some perspective. At least when I started it a number of years ago, it was a little bit selfish on my part in the sense that I wanted to talk to punk dads that I kind of looked up to, and it was an easy way to kind of get them to agree to kind of talk to me. And it's a little bit out of the norm. It's a bit of a niche in the fact that we talk about that parenting piece and try to get their perspective. And not really, we're not really an advice show, but there's a little bit of advice that kind of comes along the way. So, what makes you a rad dad? Like, what are some traits that make a dad rad?
I want to go back to something that you were saying there a couple minutes ago, because it just, that really hit me, in that we it's this punk thing, and especially as somebody who's Irish, and like, not Irish Catholic upbringing per se, but like, that's, in the old country, that's what it was. There's that whole Irish thing about, like, I'm never gonna be like me dad, you know what I mean? And like, yeah, maybe I fell into a little bit of that stereotype. I like whiskey too. But no, like that Irish punk stereotype of, like, I'm not going to be like the old man. And then that sort of tied into me becoming a father, was that I had all these anxieties before I became a dad, where it was, what part of me is going to be the father here? Because I know the selfish part of me who knows how to take care of me. I know the part of me who knows how to take care of my beautiful wife. Do I know how to take care of another human being? And it goes back to the fact that, like, my own fathers and their own ability to be present at certain times, and maybe not so much at other times, I didn't really feel like I had that knowledge hardwired into me. So I think part of what's being a rad dad, to me, is that self-awareness, to know that we're not always going to get it right. It goes a hell of a lot more beyond just showing up and being there. It's teaching the young men and women in our lives, our kids, to be strong and brave and resilient, and to be kind, and to have empathy, and to understand stories from other perspectives, and walk a mile in someone else's shoes, that kind of thing. I think, to me, that's what makes a rad dad. And that's also, if we're going to talk about punk, I think that was sort of what, there was the emotional bloodletting of, like, so many of these punk bands that I loved when I was a kid, where you had like a no effects on one end of things, but then you'd hear all this, like, Midwest emo punk, where these people were absolutely just, like, you know blood, sweat, and tears on these records that were selling no copies. How does this get to me as a guy in Vancouver? You that emotional maturity was something that struck me and struck a chord within me. And I think that emotional maturity that we sort of developed as a kid through the music that we listened to, we're now passing that on to our children, saying, hey, here's a perfectly okay thing to do: cry, or to say I don't know, or to not have the answer to everything. That's perfectly all right. Go try and find the answer. Get those tears out, admit to your shortcomings and work on being better at them. And that's that's the influence of the music that I listened to growing up certainly got me to that point. And that's what I think being a rad dad is all about, to be perfectly frank, is that emotional awareness. And then a lot of that starts with the art that you consume, I think.
I wholeheartedly agree. Like I'm always hesitant sometimes to throw that word punk rock or punk around, just because
Sure.
of just the various connotations that it kind of conjures up with people. You have like on one end where you have, bands, I can't think of, maybe Exploited, where it's like, fuck the system or smash the system. And it's like old earlier Sex Pistols, like destroy, bring down this sort of thing. It didn't really resonate with me, although I like those bands for sure. The bands that kind of changed me were like things like MDC, Crass, and Bad Religion. The fact that the lead singer of a band has a PhD in evolutionary biology, I
Right.
saw that as more of a hero of mine than say someone like Johnny Rotten, who and so I guess where I'm going with that is that I agree with you in the fact that the art that we can kind of consume, and punk has taught me a lot in terms of being a dad, which for some people it may sound silly, but when you didn't have parents that were really around, or a father that wasn't really around, I don't know how silly that is.
I don't
If
think that's silly at all. I think you're
you,
absolutely shaped positively and negatively by what you consume. And I think good art can have a negative effect on you. Good art can make you feel really terrible. Good art can make you feel horrible emotions that you never want to feel again. It's okay to watch a movie that emotionally shatters you and you go, yeah, I don't think we'll be sitting through that again, right? That's still really good art. Music can be the same way, and it can, and not in the way that you're reaching to turn it off because you go, oh, this is completely hollow. It says nothing to me. It can be something where maybe you have everyone's got that breakup song or something like that, right? But yeah, no, to me, like I think in the broader term of punk too, and this is also something where like as you have a child and they sort of stretch out and they're thinking about music and what does that mean to me and where do I stand in all of this. And like my son is around a ton of music. We are constantly playing music. I big record collection, that kind of thing. um and he's I've very much gone out of my way to I want you to I want you to know top 40 pop, but I also want you to know let's cast the net as wide as humanly possible here, right? um I think that the broader definition of punk is what these kids are understanding now a little bit more. Where you and I grew up in an era where there was these sort of like these safeguards and vanguards, and you had to click through a certain turnstile before you could be this amount of punk, like that kind of thing. Certainly, that gatekeeping is not here for younger kids, which I think is fantastic because you can take a band. You mentioned like Crass or Bad Religion, that kind of thing. I mean, at the same time, what's to say a band like Jawbreaker, who are more emotionally in tune, perhaps, as opposed to like politically in tune with what their songwriting is? Who's to say that that's more or less punk than something else, right? Like it's the idea of the DIY. It's the idea of it coming from the heart, of it coming from your basement, of it not being this, grand gesture with eyeliner and silly and it's all very grassroots, right? So I think the cool thing too is that the kids that we're raising, you and I, don't really have that. Well, if it's the Warped Tour, is it really punk thing that was so gatekeepy when we were younger, right? And that's fantastic. That is wonderful for them. Wonderful.
Agree. And like, and so well, there's so many things that you could kind of unpack there. And I think that's kind of what, you know, that ethos has kind of provided, me with what I do with the Rad Dad stuff. It's really DIY. We've had some, some would say large, big popular guests on our show, and it's just like people are asking, well, how do you get these guests? Well, I'm just ask them.
100%.
I just email and ask them, and so I've always appreciated that DIY stuff, for sure. So is that like, are those lessons that you inherently teach your kid, or is it just, do you have those discussions? I don't know, he's pretty young now, but
Yeah,
do you
he's
still have?
7. I think he like listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't act like a gatekeepy dick sometimes because we all do, and that's how it is with the big eye roller, for the new chapel roan or whatever, like that kind of thing. I think for him and I, the conversations that we've had about, not just music but art or anything, is that as long as it's coming from in here, that's what really matters here, right? And as long as it's coming from somewhere that's a place of, not necessarily, it's difficult. It's difficult to separate that for a kid because they have this they have this idea that, hardwired into them, whether they like it or not at this age, that like success is defined by popularity, right? Like he watches all these guys on YouTube who are Mr. Beast or whatever, who are, oh man, we need to subscribe and we got to like and subscribe and we got to get to 50,000 followers and that kind of thing. And like the funny thing about that is that A, I don't really understand a lot of that, and B, I can't quite square it away to myself, so I don't know how to square it away to him. Where I'm just saying, as long as you're making something that is real and authentic, that's all that really matters. And I think it's the best lesson I can impart with him, because going back to all these guys who he watches on YouTube and whatnot, kids these days are developing in real time a filter to understand that sometimes what I'm seeing is not real. And it's that's, where that comes from with me, is my love of professional wrestling, where my son has to understand John Cena is not beating up that guy. The character John Cena plays is beating up that guy. And so you have to understand that when you're watching these YouTube videos. I'm like, can you believe this, Dad? They filled that guy's house with uh I don't know, popcorn packing peanuts and that kind of thing, and oh, they made $1 million. And I'm going like, but did they really? What you're watching right now is this, you've got to have that bullshit detector, for lack of a better term, and kids are developing that now because we're growing up in this they're growing up in this era of like a completely new media that, I'm sorry, so much of like YouTubing and esports and a lot of TikTok and influencer, that kind of celebrity, is like completely passed me by, and I'm totally fine with that. And I don't know, again, I don't know how to square it to myself, so I'm trying my best to square it away to him by simply saying, as long as what you believe, as long as what you're making you believe in, then that's okay.
No, I get that. I'm a school teacher, and so I've kind of seen this kind of evolution of, well, I started teaching when cell phones were not a thing yet.
Sure.
And so I've seen what it's kind of become, and in terms of that and those discussions in the classroom, right? To, especially now, AI obviously is a big thing, and dealing with Chat GPT and students using it. I'm all about the technology. I'm not a TikTok guy by any means,
Right. Yeah.
like that, but I've, for example, this past year, I've encouraged students to use ChatGPT to create their resume or a cover letter, and how they could kind of use that technology for good, I guess. But
Right.
it's definitely a challenge. I have a 13-year-old and a 2-year-old, so I'm still, in the midst of all those things that you're kind of talking about. That being said, like, are you, a censor at all? Do you censor? Are you someone that really pays close attention to what your kid is consuming, or?
I play close attention, but at the same time, I don't put up too many. Uh, he has begged me, my son, my beautiful son, has begged me to watch Evil Dead 2 more times than I can count. One night I had a Monday, I had a rare Monday off, and he had to go to school on Sunday. So he went upstairs to go have a bath before, his Sunday night bath. And I had Evil Dead 2 on. And he came downstairs and he's just a gate in front of the TV. And I'm like, hey, and this is only like 6 months ago. And he's like, what are you watching? What is this movie? He has a chainsaw for a hand? Like, yeah, man, it's Evil Dead 2. And he like, is this a good movie? And what am I gonna say? No? Like, buddy, it's Evil Dead 2. Like, it's the craziest film. It's so good. Well, when could we? And then like my wife was like, "You better not be watching Evil Dead 2 down there from upstairs." Okay, that's cool, like whatever. But like, yeah, here's the thing. He's aware of a lot of pop culture that is admittedly very over his head and that maybe he's not emotionally ready for yet. But I think it makes it easier to say, I don't know if you should watch Evil Dead 2 yet. If you like, no, it's forbidden. We mustn't watch Evil Dead 2. No, I'm here to tell you, Evil Dead 2 is fucking rad. And when you are 12, it is going to blow your mind. So, like, 4 or 5 more years, dude. And then I swear to God, we'll make popcorn. It'll be the best night ever. Like that kind of thing, right? So, there is a lot of stuff where, I mean, I'm hands on in as much that I'd like to know what he's consuming, but I'm also hands off enough to know that I trust him in terms of like making the right decisions. And so far, he's been pretty good with that, where I don't want to have any secrets. I don't want it to be like with my parents where I'm sneaking in Nightmare on Elm Street 4 or that kind of deal, right? He and I share a lot of, one of the things that I didn't have to introduce him to in pop culture that he found, he was about 3 years old and he found a box of my old Godzilla Blu-rays down in our basement. And he said to my wife, he's like, "What's this?" And she goes, "You better go ask Dad." And so this poor little guy humps this like box stair by stair up from the basement where I currently am right now. And I remember he pulled out a Godzilla Final Wars Blu-ray, which has got like, it's one of the like big battle ones. It's got like 9 characters on the front of the DVD. And he's like, what is this? Like, tell me what this is. And I was like, "That's Godzilla." And he's Cole's notes, this gigantic radioactive dinosaur who comes out of the sea to do battle with other gigantic monsters, often in Japan. Like, what an elevator pitch for a 3. Really? Yeah, okay. And so he got into it. It was one of those things that he sort of stumbled backwards into because we had it around the house. And he was, I mean, by the time he turned 5, he was over it because he'd seen them all. That's just something I used to be into. Godzilla, like that kind of thing, right? So, it's really wonderful to watch that happen. And I believe those moments kind of come organically from not the hover around his pop culture interests, right? Just let it happen. He'll make good decisions. And he did.
That's cool. Yeah, it's a very similar philosophy that I have. Again, being a teacher and this past year assistant principal, I've kind of seen
Oh, wow.
the influence of the social media and the bullying that sort of happens, and I kind of reflect and walk away most days and be like, yeah, my son's not like that. Like, I'm an assistant principal at a junior high school, and he's in junior high, and so it's just interesting. You mentioned the idea of trust, and I have a lot of trust in my son, and I'm just always kind of curious, is that some, but it's not like I had these conversations with him about being trustworthy. It's just that it just kind of happened. I like the word you use, organically and naturally. And so I'm just wondering, what is it? Is it just kind of the nuance? Is it just a personality thing that you have maybe with your kids, or?
We have a really good rapport. My son and I'm quite proud of the fact that the things that we can talk to each other about. at this age, and I'm sure that might change over time, given how, as a child gets older, they naturally get a little bit more private, and you don't know as much about them. But at the same time, I'd also like him to know that I'm here. I'm available when you are ready to talk. You can always talk to me about whatever it is that you want to. He's he's a lot like me in that he does love to communicate. I mean, obviously, I bullshit for a living, right? Uh, but I think the cool thing that we do talk about is that I could never have a conversation with my mom when I was his age, and I love Godzilla myself. My conversation with my mom was, "Hey, do you remember that Asian supermarket that we went to that had VHS tapes last week? Yes. Is there any way you can drive me there on the weekend so I can see if I can find giant monsters all out attack?" And she again, you and your Godzilla, like, and this is the 80s, like, there is no internet. You saw a VHS tape on the wall at an Asian supermarket. I grew up in Vancouver, so I had, tons of, which was great, that, you know, anime being around as a kid, and it just sort of be like a second nature thing. All these places that I could go to that would have these, shelves and shelves and shelves of films that were not from Hollywood. It's not the Breakfast Club and like Indiana Jones. It's all these like amazing looking Hong Kong action movies or Japanese monster movies. Like, I want to see that. That looks so cool. If I brought that up with my mom, it was sort of like a dismissive hand wave. Whereas with my son, I mean, even if it's stuff that I'm not crazy into Pokemon, but he got a rare card this weekend when he opened up a pack, and I was like, tell me all about it, dude. I want to know about your joy. I want to know about you're happy, you're up, you're down, that kind of thing. So I think a lot of it starts in just, taking interest in what they're doing. And it's fun. It's fun to know what he's into and what he's reading. He's a voracious reader, which is awesome. I love that he reads a lot. And and showing that interest and saying, yeah, tell me all about that Pokemon, man. Like, I might forget about it tomorrow, but I want to know.
That's
And
sweet.
it's funny too, because like as we're having this conversation, I also realize that like a lot of what we're talking about navigating from a parental aspect. I mean, certainly for what you do as a job because you're a teacher, so you are working directly with children, right? But I'm saying this out loud, and I'm talking about my son and his development as a human being, as my development as a father. Virtually everything that we've talked about thus far applies to what I do for work, because it used to be, are you good on the radio? Yes. Okay, you can be on the radio. Now it's, are you good on the radio? Do you have a social media presence? What type of TikToks? What's your, like, it's my industry has changed so much over the 25, 30 years that I've been doing this for a living, that like it almost tempers you for parenthood, right? Because you have to, when you are working in that in a mixed media milieu, you have to be on your toes and ready for it. And that's kind of parenthood, man. It's being ready for them to come home and be like, oh, and by the way, I want to get a phone and I want to be on TikTok. And you walk into work and one morning they're going to be like, well, do you make Instagram videos? Now you do, if you want to keep your job, right? So I'm learning it. I'm learning at the same clip that he is. To be perfectly frank, sometimes it's a jungle out there, man.
That's one of the things that you kind of, alluded to and talked about is, well, that I get joy out of being a parent, just sharing the kind of those loves. I don't want my son to be a clone of me, obviously, or my sons, but I want them to find things that they're passionate about. And I find my job is to kind of share my passions with them. And so that's why, my son's probably been to, almost 100 concerts. A lot of my friends playing bands and stuff. So he's part of that world. Like I mentioned, Dad Religion. I have him sing a couple Black Flag songs with at our shows and stuff like that. And to me, that's
Now
really
I gotta know, what songs does he do? What songs?
Nervous Breakdown.
Oh, fantastic!
I'll have to send you a link. Yeah, that's
I
kind
would
of
love to see that.
his hits. It's super cool. And you talked about like, he's big into hockey, so he's been asking me for years to watch Slapshot, and I was like, oh, should I watch it? Like, haven't yet, but I don't know where I was going with that. It's just kind of that sharing that love and that passion. And then I remember him coming home, I want to start a YouTube channel. It's like he's like, Dad, you have a YouTube channel for your thing. Can you kind of show me? I'm like, okay. I'm like, I don't know. Like, is this good? You gotta
Right.
talk with your mom. It's the whole idea of having your kid on the social media piece but it's definitely a changing world in the sense that me being a teacher too, you still have to be able to relate with them, or your job's
100%.
awful.
Absolutely.
So it's kept me youthful, I guess, and young. And I think punk has done that as well. If we bring it back to that kind of idea, is that there's that kind of that youth kind of piece. Although a lot of the bands I listen to are, 50, 60-year-olds still rocking. But
Right. Yeah, yeah.
but they still have that. In what ways has fatherhood changed you?
Everywhere. Everywhere. It was instantaneous. I'm not a big video game guy. My wife is she is a game developer with BioWare here in Edmonton, so she works on like the Dragon Age games and that. She's a huge video game. Yeah, that's her job essentially. And now my son is also into video games, and the way that I describe it both to them is I held him for the first time, and it was that like achievement unlocked, right? Like that there was that dad that was inside of me the whole time, that I got maybe nature hardwired into me, click, opened up, and it was uh the best. I love what fatherhood has done for me. um I feel like I'm the best version of myself. Maybe not physically. I can take a lot better care of myself, but that's more my job as opposed to parenthood. I feel like I am the best version of myself when I am being Brendan's dad and Crystal's husband, and that's just nothing in my life has brought me that much unparalleled joy. There hasn't been a record. There hasn't been a movie. There hasn't been a sports anything. I cheer for a lot of shitty teams, anyways. But like, I haven't had that. It's just such an overwhelming sense of like, oh, this is where I belong. This is my place. This is my thing that I was meant to do. I think a lot of that comes too from, and one of the biggest changes for me was I was always a very career driven person. I got into radio when I was about 20 years old. I'm 45 now. I always say like my 20s are a blur. Like I remember meeting Crystal, my wife, and then all of a sudden it was 5 years later. Like it was, I worked. I was at work. I was working evenings. I was working bar gigs. I was working, just whatever you can to sort of like to get your reps in, to get better on the radio, which I mean, you could argue maybe I am and maybe I'm not, right? Like, I don't know. I think my longevity speaks for itself more than anything else on my resume, but um, it was just that work, move, go across the country, move here, move there, do this, do that, always get ahead, until I finally got to that point where I was like, okay, I think I'm in a good enough pocket here that I can maybe try this fatherhood thing. I didn't become a dad until I was 37 years old, which is, I mean, a lot of my friends in the 20s were like, oh, get it over with now. Get it over with now. And I'm like, get what over with? Like, I'll do it when I feel like this is the time, right? And yeah, it was an immediate paradigm shift from living my life to achieve at work and have that career. And you realize pretty quickly that like the career is it's just a series of goalposts moving. Oh, you've done this? Well, have you ever been, I don't know, like, okay, now you have a radio show. Are you the number one radio show? Well, no, we're number three. One pays better than three. Okay, I guess. Well, what if I get to be the number one show? Do you have a syndicated radio show? Because syndicated pays better than number one. Like, there's always just this like never ending cycle of like do more, get better, and and eventually at some point you just have to go, I can only achieve with what's in within my means, otherwise I'm going to kill myself trying to do everything, right? And so the moment Brendan came into my life, it was just this synaptic response in my head, like a literal, I don't care about that anymore. I care about this now. This human being that my wife and I are holding, this is what I care about. So, you know, it makes me legit emotional when I think about it, because he changed my life in so many beautiful ways. He changed my wife and I's relationship, and just, to have that, like, we did this and it's bringing us so much joy. Like, that's incredibly special. So yeah, that's how he changed me. And every single day it's just been, it doesn't stop being fun. It gets more and more fun. And I know that's maybe an atypical reaction for a lot of people, but like, that's really how it's been for me. It's been great the entire time. I also would just like to note, I realize that I'm using my wife's Harry Potter mug. Please don't take this as any sort of endorsement of J.K. Rowling or her bullshit. I just grab whatever mug is in there. I don't like Harry Potter. I don't like J.K. Rowling. Let's just get that out of the way right now. Sorry, I've been up since 4 a.m.
There we go. I'll have to get you a Rad Dads mug. We have Rad Dads.
I would love one. That'd be great.
I'll give you 2 seconds. I'll show.
Beautiful.
For next time.
Oh man, that's perfect. Absolutely, yes, 100%.
I'll get you one for sure. No, thanks for sharing that. No, that's yeah, it's heartfelt. It does get better. I'm like I said, my son's 13 and 14, and then every year it gets older. It's just unique. Like when they get to that age, sharing passions and stuff like that. For
Sure, yeah.
Last year, we went out to Las Vegas and went to a hockey game on the Friday night, went to the punk rock museum,
Oh wow, right on.
got to meet Noodles from Offspring. He's a big Offspring fan, so that was rad. And
That's
then
not insignificant. That's kind of a legendary dude, right?
and then
But it strikes me though, as we're saying this out loud, that like, I do want to clarify though, if there is a dad who's listening to us talk this way and is not feeling those feelings, and or maybe is trying to um feel those feelings, or like, listen, there is no blueprint for what it is to be a dad. Every human being is different, every family is different, every child is different. They all need a different set of skills to be nurtured. So like, I certainly hope, like, maybe I don't want to come across as though I'm bragging, or like, well, my life's great because I have a kid, but like, I just want to say to dads out there who are struggling, if you are struggling, it's totally okay to struggle. And this is why I believe a podcast like this is so wonderful, is to know that like, it'll get better, and there are certainly tools and resources out there for you to, there are other dads who are feeling that way, and no, there is no right or wrong experience with it. So long as you get to, the right, I hate to write your ending like it's some silly meme, but like, that's the common goal, is a happy father and a happy child, I think. And if that doesn't always happen, it's not always smooth sailing, and that's okay.
oh yeah, and pardon my language, but it's fucking hard. I get my
Yeah, it's really fucking hard. It is.
so like I always like to just be kind to yourself, and this is why we do the show. I've had a handful of people come up to me and say, hey, your podcast has changed my life, and to me, okay, like that's a pretty bold statement.
It's
It's like,
huge.
oh, really? Like it really did. And so I'm honored by that. And I also get, emails who are through like my website, or like Rad Dads Edmonton, on a weekly basis, like, hey, I'm struggling. Like, do you have some resources? And so we've created a resource page for dads. There's definitely a lack of resources for fathers and dads.
Oh, big time. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of why, like, Rad Dads Edmonton is kind of, I guess it's sustained itself in that sense, and that I feel like I need to kind of keep going a little bit and just.
Oh, there's a whole lot of walking left to do, man. There is a ton of walking left. Like, A great example of that is like when something I had noticed before I became a dad. How many change tables do you see in a men's room, like a men's gender specific bathroom? Zilch. And I would, my wife and I would be out, and I'd have to say, like, listen, I hate to saddle you with this duty, but like, there's quite literally nowhere. There is not even a flat surface in the men's room for me to like. And this is not in a place where like, oh, there's no change table in this strip club or something like that. I'm talking at like a Toys R Us or like a Walmart or a grocery store. You go into the men's bathroom, forget it, man. There is nowhere for you to change your kid. Like it's the that should be almost academic that men and women or any gender has whatever bathroom you're using. You should absolutely have a place to change a child, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we will. You're right. I've changed. When Kingston, he's my oldest, was younger. I think it's getting better, but it was younger. Like there was probably a few bathroom floors that I had to change him on because there was nowhere else to do.
Nowhere.
What's going on here?
Where are you gonna do it, right? Yeah.
And that's how I actually feel about, and this is why we do some of the events that we do, like for Rad Dads, is there's I don't know if ageist is the word, but I find it difficult, or what did I find it difficult to do things that I liked to do without having my kid. A lot of those things, like shows, for example, there's a lot less all ages shows that are happen or happened. I think they're kind of coming back again. But the things like that, that's why we do kind of those events. I wanted always to kind of do an event, or do something and have my kid present. And it's
Sure.
not always the case. There's a lot of times there's a lot of alcohol involved, and for various reasons. I understand that. Businesses want to make money, but that's kind of why we do some of those events, is to kind of encourage that. But
Well, it allows them, and it's cool to have that because it allows them one foot in the door to understanding the absolute thrill of going to a 5 o'clock in the afternoon all ages punk show when you turn 14, 15 years old for the first time by yourself. You're going to go there knowing, okay, there's a certain amount of etiquette that goes along with this, whether you want to admit it or not, punk unquote unquote. But there is, and there might be guys there who are going to act like total dicks, and there might be guys there who are going to act like dicks to the girls that you're with, or your gay friends, or your trans friends, and that's just sort of something that comes along. I'm not saying that that's what you're attracting at your shows, but like that there is a bit of that. There's a wonderful element of danger there that they get to experience for the first time. If you've got them the training wheels of going to a really safe, awesome, respectable place for that, they'll know how to react once they are in a maybe more hostile experience at a punk show, right? Because unfortunately, that is kind of the world we live in. Nothing's going to be this perfect utopia of us all holding hands. And I don't know, like I always want my son to know that like everybody deserves your respect, right? And that's a great thing about what you do, is that this is, again, Training Wheels Punk Show is phenomenal, especially when your kid is singing Nervous Breakdown with you. What is it about Black Flag that's just like awesome when you're 4, awesome when you're 40? Like, it's the most primal thing in the universe, hey?
It's the very first dad religion show. My friend Braden, he helped start Rad Dads with me, and he's the bassist in the band. And his mom came, and she made a comment on her Facebook after that show. I never thought I'd see the day where I saw a toddler mosh pit. And so we've embraced that, I think, on our Facebook page. I put, we specialize in toddler.
This is what we do, right? I love it.
Did you have any fears about being a dad?
I did. Yeah. I now know that I can navigate it. But prior to, I had a lot of I was very lucky. I had a lot of dads to talk to. And I realize that's not the same with everybody, but like, peers in my peer group, dads that I could talk to. Again, going back to the old Irish Catholic thing, my parents divorced when I was 4. My mom and dad both remarried when I was quite young. And I had a bit of tempestuous relationship, I suppose, with my stepfather. It's better now that we're, adults and we can talk about it. But at the time, he was a early 40s guy who had been, virtually single. He doesn't have any other children. And then he meets me and my mom, and I'm 12 years old, and I'm coming into my own, and I'm finding out who I am, and what art I like, and what I want to be as a person, and how to project myself. And we just did not, for a decade plus, did not get along. Like, we did not have any common ground to stand on. And that was really tough because my father and I, my dad, like my birth dad, had a good relationship in as much that he was kind of party dad. He'd pick me up every second weekend and take me to go see Ferris Bueller's Day Off and let me have an entire can of Coke and stay up late to watch Saturday Night's Main Event. Like, he was party dad. He was good times. And I don't begrudge him that. He only got to see me every 2 weeks. So it was, let's cram. Yes, we can go for lunch at Chuck E. Cheese. Like, he was just that dad because he was there every 2 weeks. And then my mom sort of got settled with the other side of it, where she was like, I got to keep the wheels of commerce turning here. Like, I have to be the one that gets you out of bed in the morning and you go to school and that kind of thing. So when my stepdad came into my life, I wouldn't say I was aching for a like father figure, but like I really needed a strong male presence at the time to sort of guide me through, that you're going through puberty, you're becoming a 12, 13, 14-year-old boy. These are the opinions that I hold. These are the facts that I believe to be true. This is a band I really like. This is the way I want to dress. This is how I want to, and I didn't have that from him. I didn't have that from him at all. He didn't like, you can't wear makeup. You're a boy. Yeah, I can. Why can't I? Why can't I wear nail polish? And then, they didn't have nail polish on the prairies in the 1950s or 60s, I guess, right? So like that's where we had this disconnect of like he didn't understand that I was really stretching my legs and trying to find myself. And so that scared me that I would have that somehow baked into me, that when I had a child, something would come along where I'd go like, well, it wasn't like that when I grew up. But you pretty quickly realize, I think, that again, this goes back to what we were talking about before. The art that you consume and the niches that you're involved in and the scenes and communities that you get involved with, that's not going to happen. And I didn't know that until I literally held my son and realized, oh, okay, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm absolutely not going to be that guy, to the point that I will actively encourage him to, like I've always said, like, I'm not a huge guy when it comes to like, I'm not a big hockey guy. I'm sorry. I'm just not a huge hockey dude. But I've always been like, you should learn how to skate. It would be good to learn how to skate. And if you want to play hockey, like, go nuts. No, I'm not kind of not into it. Like, whatever. Like, but I just want you to have everything. If you want to learn dance, equestrian, guitar, hockey, football, like, I just want everything on the menu to be able for you to order. I kind of didn't have that. And it caused me to rebel a little bit, but it also caused me to, and it goes back to that punk thing. Fuck me. No, fuck you, and fuck you twice as hard. And I'm really going to show, you know what I mean? I think a lot of my achievement in my life has come from the fact that I wanted good things for myself, and I wanted good things when I eventually had a family, but it didn't come from a place of like, well, we didn't have that growing up, so hopefully we have it when I grow, like that kind of thing. Which it's great, but a lot of it came from a place of like anger. A lot of it came from a place of being told like, nah, you're not going to amount to much. I'm not. I'll fucking show you how much I'm not going to not amount to anything. Nah, come on. And that's good for motivation. That's a great motivator. That fire inside of you, it drives you. But at the same time, like, that's a really unhealthy place to be. Like, wow, you did really good. You must be really proud of that. Yeah, I really fucking shoved it down my dad's throat. Like, yikes, man. That's scary, right? So yeah, that was what I was worried I was going to pass on to my son, and that scared the hell out of me, man. Scared the it does not that it doesn't scare me now. It's just that I'm aware of it. I'm cognizant of it whenever I, and if I catch myself with the sins of the father, that kind of thing. If I catch myself ever veering into that lane, I can pretty much self correct now and know, like, no, I should probably, you know, don't be what your dad did, right? That kind of thing. So yeah, that was scary as hell. Oh my god.
Yeah, I was terrified. Always a lot of these questions I kind of conjured up way back when was more for me. I think it was almost therapeutic in the early goings of this podcast because my dad wasn't around. My dad actually committed suicide about 20 some years ago, and just what really wasn't around. Raised by my mom, single mom, three kids, and
Right.
my grandpa or my Guido was around, but he passed away. So I never really. And then there was a stepdad that kind of came into to play, but we had a relatively good relationship at points. But he was an alcoholic, and all of the decisions that I've done, I think, are to be exactly like opposite of my parents. Maybe that's, I don't know, maybe is it the anger kind of piece, but it's also, you talk about being cognizant of those things. So I kind of catch myself sometimes. It's like, hey, wait a minute, I'm acting exactly how my stepdad would. Whoa, let's slow on the brakes and then
It's
have.
good to know that though. It's good to have that self-awareness, right?
Sure. And having my first kid, I was terrified. I remember being at the hospital. I had no idea what to do. It was like, my ex now, she's like, go get they said we could take him away, take him home. And so I didn't know how to, this is how ridiculous it sounds. I didn't know how to get the car seat up. Like I couldn't figure out in her
How
car,
would you know?
in
How
her
would you
car.
know?
She installed it. She was part of, she was working with children at that time. It was in her car. She installed it. I didn't really even think about it. And
Right.
I brought the whole thing up, base and everything. And then the nurse just looks at me. I'm like, oh my God, like in my she thinks I'm like so incompetent. I remember begging my brother to come over just to have someone around. Like, can you please? I'll buy you pizza. Can you please come over?
Yeah, exactly.
But
Exactly.
but it's also like that switch you mentioned. It just kind of kicks in. It's just super interesting, right? To me, at least. Of
Oh, absolutely.
um,
That it's something that it manifests itself again organically, completely naturally, I think.
yeah, yeah. Last couple questions here. Last one well, two more questions.
Okay.
What's the most rewarding aspect of being a dad?
Um, there's a lot. Um, I think it's very rewarding when he understands how much I love him completely, how much I am proud of him. It's incredibly rewarding to know that our conversations that we uh, have a ton of gravity with him, right? Whereas, I kind of felt a lot of times as a kid, like, I love you, like, okay, yeah, you love me, whatever, you have to say that. I truly feel that Brendan, when I tell him I love him, he feels it in his bones. Because I know that he knows he's got a support group behind him that begins on the foundation of his mom and dad, who are, at the risk of being, oh, lovers, but like we're madly in love with one another. And we're madly in love with him. And I think he understands that bedrock is there. So incredibly rewarding for me to talk to him and for him to hear it and for him to feel it and vice versa. When he tells me he loves me, it's not just because I bought him a new pair of sneakers or something like that, right? Like that's that having that communication is something that again, not this I don't want to shit all over my parents or anything or my upbringing, but like I didn't have that. I don't know if I've ever really had that with my parents outside of adulthood when we were really on sort of much more common ground. Um, for him to have that at a young age, I think that's something that I might have been lacking. Where I was okay, I can go out there, and even if I fall flat on my face, trying something new. No one's going to give a shit because they're going to make me feel like I did okay and I tried. For him to that's incredibly rewarding to know that he's at that stage at the age of 7.
Do you find it? I said I was going to be the last question, but did you find it hard? You kind of already commented that you're just a great communicator already, and just kind of natural. Obviously, it's kind of provided you a success in your work.
Mm-hmm.
So, but like I'm kind of similar. Like I had my parents around for the most part, and but we didn't have those conversations. The communication really wasn't there, and I find sometimes I struggle a little bit to have those kind of conversations with my kids. Did you ever find that was hard, or were you simply like, I don't want to be like my parents. I'm gonna.
Yeah, it's definitely an effort. There's a this is for a frame of reference. There's a fantastic episode of King of the Hill where, and I mean, like Hank is, the typical conservative dad, where he has to admit that he doesn't want to be alone with his son Bobby, who's kind of, the artsy kind of, theater kid. He doesn't want to be alone with them, not because he's doesn't understand him or he's scared of him. He doesn't know how to talk to him. He doesn't know how to make small talk with his kid, right? So I think that that's something that a lot of people maybe have a hard time dealing with. I don't know if I ever did, and I don't know if I do. A lot of what comes from having sort of a public persona in my line of work is the beauty of silence. Is the fact that when I get home, I don't necessarily have to be a center of attention. I don't necessarily have to be keeping the conversation moving, which is sort of the social anxiety that I certainly feel if I go to a pub or if I go to, I'm not trying to be the center of attention. It's just that I am often, for better or for worse, expected to be the engine of a social outing, right? I am the driver. And that's okay. Like, listen, that's probably my strongest suit in life, and that's certainly the life that I've chose for myself. But it does get exhausting. So we really have a wonderful thing in this family where we mean what we say and we say what we mean, which sounds like a greeting card thing, but like I didn't find it hard to talk to him because everything that he was saying or I was saying to him was not filtered through my career. And if I can be selfish and talk about that for a bit, he absolutely knows that what he hears me say on the radio and who he gets at home are two completely different people. Like they're, I'm when I'm at work, I'm working, I'm doing a job, I'm selling you on my radio station, I am virtually in sales, I'm selling you me, and I'm selling you my radio station. And I think the best way to do that is to be as genuine and authentic as you can possibly be. But by the same token, you know, Christian, I didn't start our conversation by telling you what the temperature is and what time it is and what, you're on Zoom. It's 8:45. My name's McCord, like that kind of thing. That's not how it goes. So I think that he knows he's getting a different version of me than maybe the one that I put out there. And I think that's really special because there are there are a lot of people in my industry who go home and are that guy, who are like, oh, you just did something funny. Maybe we can make a video of it in a TikTok and it might go viral. And I barely even put pictures of my child up on anything that I have online simply because I'm just so protective of that's his agency. And when he wants to do that, he can do it on his own time, right? I don't. I find that the moments that him and I share and my wife and I share and everything are very incredibly special, and I want those to be for us. I don't want them to be for everybody. And I feel as the more days go by in my career, I feel like I'm alone in that because I see people really living their lives online, and you can have some access to me, but you can't have everything. And so that's why it's wonderful to have something like this where I'm able to talk freely about the things that I love and the music that I love and the art that I love and how it relates to me being a father, because I certainly can't do this on my radio station. Like, and that's not a knock against what I do for a living, but like, I can't go on a commercial radio station in Edmonton and talk about how much I like Black Flag. That's just not a thing. That's not a thing. It's not what it is. And that's the funny thing is I got into it because I was like, what will be, how can I get paid to talk about music? How can I get paid to listen and talk and everything about music, right? Like that kind of thing. I could be a journalist, but back in 2001, that seemed to be a little bit like, well, if everything's moving online and blah, 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 I know the radio. And then you get into radio and within 5 minutes in radio, you go like, oh, this is dick jokes. Like, it's like, think about at the time, like at that time at the drive-in and Relationship of Command have just come out, and I was crazy about that record. And I was just like, man, if they would just like, if we could play One Arm Scissor on the radio once and I could talk to people about like why this band is so important and everything that they're saying and doing right now is just the explosion of this punk thing that's been bubbling up for so long. And then you quickly realize that like no program director wants that from you. They want the fucking Friday morning fart song or whatever, right? Like that kind of thing. So what I do for a living is fun and I have a great time, and I'm certainly not poo-pooing what I do. I love it. But by the same token, the paradigm shift that happens when I come home and I talk to my son is that it's a different voice, it's a different inflection, it's everything is different. My whole work is stripped away. So that's when I can truly be myself, I guess, is when I'm talking to him. That's a wonderful privilege.
Yeah, it's this inherent need of people to broadcast their life is something I've been, thinking a lot about lately, and thinking about my role and what I have put out on social media and stuff. I've definitely kind of scaled back and dialed back, because yeah, it's like, I don't know, I just don't care anymore.
I don't care anymore, and I think they repeat. See, social media was wonderful back in, the stone age of the internet in like the late 90s, early 9/11 era, where you could use a message board, especially if you were into punk or you were into, any kind of weird music or any sort of very niche scene. You could find other people who were like you. And it wasn't necessarily that you were looking for attention. It was that you were looking for a lifeline. The entire time you were going like, Christ, there has to be somebody else who loves this band as much as I do. And it doesn't matter who they are or what walk of life they come from. I just want to talk to someone for whom this music, gives them the same emotional charge. And from that seed of a wonderful global community, a global village, comes whatever we have now, where it's just so, I don't know, there's so much as a member of the media, there is so much emotional manipulation and performative emotion too, where you know like, do you mean everything that you're saying? There's no way you can mean what you're saying right now. Like, this is all just for serving the purpose of attention, right? And to back you up, like, I think what you're doing with this podcast and with Rad Dads, this is the complete opposite of that, because as opposed to making it all about yourself, this is about becoming being a father, how it changes you, what it becomes. Like, this is a resource that men need, I think, as opposed to, we put 100 fucking Roman candles in our heads and blew them out, and like that kind of thing, right? There's so, I don't know. I think it's good. At least I'm seeing it with my son and a few of the kids his age. They have that media savvy to look at what's happening on YouTube and go, this is real, this is bullshit, right? I'm shocked. I think it's more about the people in our generation who are in their 30s or 40s who don't have that syntax to know, like, you are being manipulated by this person online. You are only seeing the good parts of who they are. Like, it's a whole nother conversation for another time.
Totally.
But again, that's something as a dad that you have to be aware of when you're raising these children in this new online world, that They gotta know what's real and they gotta know what's BS, man, because there is so much BS out there. But
Yeah, like, and if I look at like Rad Dads to be, like in social media, Instagram. So Rad Dads was started with three of us, my friend Braden and my friend Nigel. He's the one that does all the graphic design. I met him
sure.
through Instagram and our love of SNFU and punk records. Like he was doing this SNFU kind of graphic thing and poster that he made. And I was like, oh, hey, like I love this band. And he's like, oh, I'm making a poster. I'm from Edmonton. Hey, so am I. Like, let's go for a beer. And we were just out for beers the other day. That was almost 10 years ago, and we're like good friends that we've created this
Right.
community. So there is the positive of that social media. I've met a lot of good friends via my love of punk and punk records. I have a big record punk collection, and like to share them online, and you kind of the whole thing. Anyways.
Dude, that's all my Instagram is. That's my Instagram is just, hey, check it out. Rare press of this. Like, yeah, man. That's
I
what it should be, though. That's what it should be. That's what I want to see from other people.
I've spent way too much money on this record, but
Yeah, exactly. But now that I have it, part of me is whole. So that's all that matters, right?
still searching. Last
Yeah.
question, McCord. Any advice or any words of wisdom to any new dads out there?
Oh man. Every cliche is true. All the cliches are all there so many cliches are true about it being like it's fast, it goes quickly, it doesn't stop, it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. So take the moments to enjoy it, be present, and just sort of okay, right? Because it does go quickly. The next thing you know, I feel like Brendan was born 5 minutes ago and now he's getting prepped for grade 2. That's bonkers. That's
Yeah, man. It goes by. My oldest is going into grade 9, almost high school. So yeah, let's embrace it.
no, I'm not ready. That and ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's always another dad out there who is more than willing to give you a hand up, probably. So, yeah.